Do you have a 2-car garage? Do you have the ability to put on a 3rd car? Is it worth it? Well, you can do market studies, appraisers, to determine what the cost versus the value is. But one of the factors to look at is you want to be similar to homes in the neighborhood. You want to be, quote unquote, comparable.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
I think all of us would agree that nobody really wants to be in this mode in life where you are observing your neighbors and then trying to imitate them, right? We call that keeping up with the Joneses. But in real estate, it might be smart. I want to pause here, remind you we are sponsored by Anow Software. Anow is talking about the word smart. Folks, if you want to run your business from a level of smart and not hard, check out Anow Software. It is the ability to keep track of literally everything that goes on in your appraisal office. It's Anow Software. Go to anow.com/coach. One more time, it's anow.com/coach. Well, folks, I've been doing a little bit of consulting lately and really pushing to help homeowners, real estate agents, attorneys, that kind of thing, help them understand real estate a little bit better and where value comes from. And we're going to talk today about keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with the neighborhood. Value, as you know, appraisers, comes from comparable sales. There's a lot of different ways that we can derive value, but most of us focus mainly on the sales comparison approach. And why? Usually the data is plentiful. I say that tongue in cheek because I work in Idaho and Wyoming, but it's more plentiful than some of the other sources. For example, the income approach is sometimes very difficult because of the lack of data. And, cost approach can be challenging as well, even though there's data out there. Is it reliable? Is it something that truly gives value? But comparable sales, to me, even listings that compete with the subject, tell something about a home. What other people are willing to pay for something that is, quote unquote, comparable has much to do with whether or not they're going to pay or what they're going to pay for your particular home or the subject, as the case might be. But listen, I'm not trying to sell you on the sales comparison approach. We've talked about that here in the past. But from the perspective of consulting, when you are, and I don't know how many appraisers do this, but I highly recommend it, especially with the changing flavor of the appraisal profession in the next. By the way, I've had several people reach out to me recently. In fact, just this morning, had a call from an individual who I've talked to in the past, an appraiser, and we spoke for about 15 minutes on the phone. And his big question boiled down was, hey, am I going to have a job in 3 to 5 years? And the way he asked it was, is the profession of appraisal as we know it now going to exist in 3 to 5 years? And my answer was very quickly, no. That's right. Dustin said it right here on the air. But notice the way he asked the question. Is the profession of a real estate appraisal as we know it, okay, there's some key words there, going to exist in 3 to 5 years? And the answer is no. Things are changing. So I hope, appraisers, that you are diversifying. I hope that you are looking at your business model and making some changes and doing some things that are different than you've done them in the past. But I digress. The point is I've been trying to do more consulting work. I've been trying to teach, educate those in my market, potential clients, on how value is derived. And one of the things that we've talked about recently, that I've talked about with my clients, is the neighborhood, is looking at the neighborhood. Again, I'm not talking about, hey, honey, I looked across the road and Bob and Mary have a new boat. I think maybe we should get a new boat as well. I'm not talking about that type of keeping up with the Joneses, but I am talking about understanding the neighborhood, understanding what others have, what is the norm, and are you keeping up with that? And are you exceeding that? Because that can be a problem as well. What is not a problem is working with Anow software, but I'll tell you what is a problem, and that is trying to do all of this on your own, trying to keep up with spreadsheets, and heaven forbid, that you're actually writing reports down on a piece of paper. Folks, the modern way to appraise, the modern way to run an appraisal business is Now software. It's the ability to be able to keep track of each and every order, every step along the way. We call that the assembly line in our office. There's a step that has to go first before you do the next and the next and the next, and it goes through the process. We keep track of all of that on Now software, as well as the big picture. If you've not checked them out, please do. They're great to work with, by the way. If you want a demo, they will help you through that. They'll walk you right through it and tell you and show you on your computer how this can change your life. It will. Trust me. Check them out. anow.com/coach. Again, it's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, we're talking about keeping up with the Joneses today, and really we're talking about value. Where does value come from? Well, value comes from comparables as much as possible. Now, there's some unique things out there, and I know some of you are screaming at your microphone saying, Dustin, it's not just about comparable stuff. I get it. But here, let's boil this down. We as appraisers spend most of our time with the sales comparison approach. Why? Because it's usually the one that gives us the most data and the most telling data, the most understandable data, both to ourselves and our reader. In other words, if you've got 3 homes on the same street that are model homes to the subject, and they all sold in the last 3 months for $250,000, guess what? Your home is worth $250,000. And I know that's not typical. That doesn't usually happen the way I just described it. I get it. But the concept is still the same. So here's the situation you need to look at. When you're talking to one of your clients, one of your customers, when you're consulting, and they say, hey, I'm thinking about getting a pool. Will that add value to my house? Well, honestly, it depends. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I did quite a study. It's been years ago, about maybe 10 years ago now. I had an attorney reach out to me and say, Dustin, I have a client, and I don't even remember all of the aspects of it, but it had something to do with a botched pool. They had put in a pool, and something didn't work right, and it was a resale or maybe a divorce. I don't remember. There was something to do with the pool. All I remember is this. I was called in to appraise the house with a pool and without a pool. And what is the difference in value? And guess what, folks? And this is an in-ground pool, right? This is an exterior in-ground pool, concrete, the whole nine. Now, I'm not talking about those things you buy at Walmart and set up in an afternoon. This is a full-fledged pool. Now, you're going to be shocked at this. And this was 10 years ago. Maybe things have changed. I don't know. Honestly, I don't deal with a lot of pools in Idaho. I really don't. I think there's probably 3 houses in my hometown that have pools. Literally 3. And what happened was the results of the study was that there was no value at all to the pool. And basically, it came down to the maintenance cost versus the usability. And keep in mind, usability in Idaho in an outdoor pool is about maybe 2 months, right? But you're maintaining that sucker through the whole year. The cost to maintain versus the usability and the entertainment value of a pool, it was a wash. There wasn't any value there. So when a homeowner comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about putting in a pool, can you help me to determine value? The answer isn't always, yeah, it's going to increase the value. And of course, you got to talk about, as we've talked about here on this podcast, cost versus value. Is it going to cost you $100,000 to put in a pool that might add $50,000 worth of value? I don't know. But that's why they come to you as a professional. But here's the big question. This is what we're dealing with today. This is where I want to focus today. The principle of today is, what are the Joneses doing? Okay, again, I don't think you should live your life based on the Joneses, but if you're talking value, it actually is something you should think about. So the question you ask is, are you the only house in the neighborhood without a pool? That may be a negative, and it may be a lot bigger negative than the cost to put it in. Okay, let's use something that's a little bit more common. 3-car garage versus a 2-car garage. Are most of the homes in your neighborhood 3-car garages? And do you have a 2-car garage? Do you have the ability to put on a 3rd car? Is it worth it? Well, you can do market studies, appraisers, to determine what the cost versus the value is. But one of the factors to look at is you want to be similar to homes in the neighborhood. You want to be, quote unquote, comparable. There's a question on every single Fannie Mae appraisal form. I'm talking the 1004 here at the bottom, right? The question, I think, is something to the effect of, does the subject property conform to other properties in the neighborhood? Well, folks, that's not just a checkbox. It's not just a yes or no. You really have to step back and sometimes ask yourself the question, does the subject conform? Because if it doesn't, that's a problem both with value and marketability. Okay, it's a key factor, really. Let me give you an example. If you are looking at maybe a tract home development, okay, typical tract home development, and right in the middle of the tract home development is an old log home. Okay, maybe the tract development was developed around this old log home, and everything else in the tract home development is, 10, 15 years old. The log home is 50 years old. All the tract homes are vinyl siding with, asphalt shingles, and your log home is, log with a metal roof. Okay. That's not normal. And that's going to affect value, right? It's not normal, and it's going to affect value because you don't conform with the other properties in the neighborhood. Now, you move that home 50 miles away into the mountain foothills, and log may be the norm. And at that point, the answer to the question is yes, it does conform to other properties in the neighborhood. And if you possibly move the tract home out there 50 miles away into the foothills where it's surrounded by rustic log homes, that might be a problem. So value is very much dependent on what is in the neighborhood. It's true on less obvious things as well. Will granite, I get this question all the time when I'm doing consulting. I've got laminate countertops, Dustin. If I put granite in, will it help my value? Well, it's easy to think the answer is yes, right? Well, laminate versus granite? Well, of course. Well, maybe. But guess what? If you're the only one in the neighborhood that has granite countertops, the typical buyer in that neighborhood is not necessarily looking for that. Now, would it help? Sure. Remember the story I told you a couple weeks ago about my wife and I and the installation of our granite? We I think, spent about $6,000 on the granite, and it definitely increased the value of our home over $10,000. Now, that may not be the case in a neighborhood where it's very much the norm to have laminate. Something to think about, keeping up with the Joneses, but not necessarily from the aspect of you got to have all the toys and the lifestyle that they have. But when it comes to value, the neighborhood makes a difference. I'll tell you another thing that's making a difference for appraisers across the nation, and that is my Appraiser Academy. We meet monthly, folks, online, live. It's interactive. You can talk, you can share, you can even show your video. We have a meeting of a small group of appraisers across the nation once a month, and we talk about their business. We talk about what they're doing. We talk about different products. We talk about marketing ideas. We talk about moving their business forward with a different business model or tweaking a business model, or just tips and tricks and tools that will help you to be a more efficient appraiser. Please join us. Go to theappraisercoach.com and select the membership tab, and you're looking for the Appraiser Academy. We'll see you there.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.